So, well, so I thought we'd just go right back to your memories of the village first, Lankvaltersdorf.
Not when I was born.
Well, yeah, from
There
what
is a
you
good
remember.
story to that.
All right.
Yeah.
What's the story?
The story is there was a little farmer village with one road, main road going through, and a little brook which ran on the side along, full of trouts and houses right and left, mostly farmhouses. We had one of the biggest farmhouses right by the road, and the farm, it was a square of houses. The main house was along the road in front, and then was a smaller house, then was a barn where the straw was kept, and was on the left side, on the right side, was a little house where the wagons were kept and the pigs were kept. And in our big house, the cows were kept and the horses. And in the middle was a pile of all the manure from all the stalls which were carried out with a wheelbarrow. Not carried, wheeled out with a wheelbarrow. We all had to do that in the morning. Anyway, there was
Every day you took out the manure? Every morning?
every morning, every night, sometimes at noon, but
Yeah.
mostly morning and night. 2 times the stables had to be
Oh,
cleaned.
twice a day.
Pardon?
Twice a day you had to clean the stables.
Twice a day, yeah. Not the pigs. The pigs were twice a week or so. Because they went all in one corner. The pigs were actually very clean. And we made, of course, hay in the summer. We had big meadows for all our cows and animals. And so on the 19th of July, Mother felt she was pregnant, and of course, and usually the children were born in the village. There was a midwife, but for some reason she decided she wants to go into the next city, which was called Waldenburg.
That was a bigger city?
Yeah, it was a nice big city. Quite a big city. And so grandfather put on the horses, and we had a how do you call it, a coach. Coach, and so she was driven
In a
the
carriage?
coach,
Horse-drawn carriage?
a horse carriage, but it was closed. It had 2 doors, and
Was that yours, the family?
it was our old
Yeah.
horse carriage for outings. We went for outings in that thing.
So was she
I
in labor
remember
at this
that.
point already?
Huh?
Was she in labor all at this
Most
point?
likely, but I haven't asked her, but I would
I
assume.
guess she must have been, yeah.
And so, of course, no one had telephones in our village at this time. So grandfather delivered her to the hospital and went back home. And next day, my grandmother sent grandfather to the post office. That was the only place in the whole village which had a telephone, to phone the hospital and see how the daughter is doing, because she lived still at home on the farm, and how she's doing. So grandfather came back home. I have a frog in my, came back home and told my grandmother she had not only one child but 2 girls. And so grandmother said, I don't believe it, I can't believe it, cannot be so. I'm sure you heard wrong, because grandfather had a little bit of problem hearing properly. So she went to the post office herself and said she has to check that out. And surely enough, she came home with the same news that 2 girls were born. And that was actually our start. A week later or so, he went back to the hospital to get us home, and since my mother wasn't married, so they debated whether they should keep us or not. But when grandmother saw us, two girls and mother, and so she said to us, no way, I give those girls away. They are staying on the farm and they will grow up here as long as I am here. And that's how our life started.
So was your farm one of the bigger ones in the whole village?
Yeah, it was one of the biggest farms and
So you were...
one of the most cultural and oriented farm. Our family was known for making music everywhere, because everyone could sing and play instruments, and the Friese girl, that was our clan, an old family, Patricia family, who were once were knighted in the olden days, and quite famous family. The whole line of Friese goes way, way, way back. As I say, for sure, I can show it to you in the book, 12th century. Was someone who collected all from old church
So
books.
one of your ancestors was a knight?
Yeah, that went on for, that was inherited until someone said, nonsense, we give it up, we don't care for that anymore. So that's where it ended. But yes, definitely.
So how big was the Langwaltersdorf village? How many people lived there
There lived
at that
about,
time?
all in all, 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
And many were, because 10 kilometers away were big coal mines, and in our village lived quite a few families where the men were coal miners, and they made very little money, and had lived in apartments mostly, and the rest were all farmers actually. And our fields, the big fields went right behind our farmhouse, way out to the forest, and forest ended our fields.
Yeah. So what did you all grow on the farm? What were your crops?
Yeah. What made money every day, which was always needed and in very short supply, was selling milk and making butter. So we had about 15 milk cows, which of course had to be milked by hand in a big store, and from this milk we separated the cream. We had a machine every night, and that was nice to be by hand operated, like so with a,
A hand crank, yeah.
Yeah.
Talking
Butter
too
milk
much.
was one main income daily. Eggs was another income. We had about 35 chickens and some geese. In the summer we had actually 12 to 14 geese, which were unfortunately killed at Christmas for friends. And
Not all of them though, just...
no, we kept always 3 for breeding
Yeah.
for next year, but most of them, yes, had to die. And chickens occasionally, but they were more or less to lay eggs and sell the eggs. And another major income was grain. We grew wheat and barley and all kinds of three different corn. Corn we used for making bread, and this was sold to the miller or to
And
people.
potatoes?
Pardon?
Potatoes, of course.
Oh yeah, potatoes, we had big fields, and in the fall we had our regular customers who came and got for the whole winter potatoes. We had a whole basement, a big room from down the bottom right up to the ceiling, all filled with potatoes. And beets as well. And we had sugar beets, quite a few. And all winter, when the field work was done in the winter, we cooked syrup out of the sugar beet syrup, and it was delicious. That was used for bread spread, and village people came too and bought with their milk can, came and got a liter of syrup, and that was also another income, as far as I remember. Yeah, and of course pigs. We grew pigs.
Yeah, and they went to the slaughterhouse, I
Pigs
guess.
was sold, and occasion. Oh, and all the little calves, most of them who were born. And every year a cow had to have a calf, otherwise they wouldn't give milk anymore. And all the little calves were sold to the butcher. So this was the main income. And we ate mostly what we produced, and mostly what grew on our fields. And that was basically pretty healthy food. We didn't have any herbicides or organic fertilizers. The fertilizer was our
cow
own manure from our animals that was put over onto the fields.
It was an organic farm, basically.
It was an organic farm, yeah.
Yes, that was just the way then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we ate a lot of potatoes because they were cheapest. Potato dumplings and milk soup, which was with more or less white flour. And yeah, but basically I think our food supply was much healthier than today. There were no tins, didn't exist, and all this
no
artificial-
processed food and
Pardon?
no processed food with artificial
processed
additives.
food.
Yeah.
That didn't exist. Yeah.
And so, what were some of your earliest memories of your naughty activities? Or actually, you didn't have running water in the farm, did you? It was all.
Oh my
You had to pump
God.
the water out of a well.
That was a nightmare. We had in our house, down in the cellar.
Mm-hmm.
Cellar is deep down, right?
Yeah.
Was a well, and this well was a mystery to us, very scary. There was no light down there and cold, and we were always told down in this well lives the waterman. A waterman has long arms, and if you go too close to this well, he will drag you down. And that, of course, was meant to deter us to go too close and fall into this
Yeah, of
well,
course.
which we were so tempted to go close. We wanted to see whether there was really a waterman. Sometimes we got a big stone and threw it down into this water to see, to hit the waterman or to hear them, you know, how deep will it fall. And the well was only covered with boards which didn't even fit together, you know, loosely, so you could easily fall down, for sure. And from this well, the water had to be pumped up with a, what's that called?
Just a hand pump.
Yeah, a hand pump.
Yeah.
You know, you had einen Stängel, and you had to pump. But before you got the water up, you always had to throw water into the pipe and pump like crazy to suck the water up.
You had to prime it.
Yeah,
Prime
and
the
then
pump.
we had a big out of cement and made basin, and that had to be pumped full of water because all the animals got the water from this basin which was in our house. And so we kids, my sister and I...
So the basin was in the water room, the cellar below?
No.
Or it was upstairs?
Basin was in our main house floor upstairs. When you came into the house, was a long, out of stones, how do you say, hallway.
Uh-huh.
And in this hallway was this big basin. It was quite a wide wall.
Yeah.
And all around the wall were pails with clean water, which were used for cooking and for washing our face and so on. And they always had to be full of clean water. But this whole basin that held maybe 100 pails of water.
Huh.
And it had to be always twice a day we had to pump this basin full of water.
Huh.
And that made our arm muscles very strong already. And
I guess so.
I remember my sister and I, we each could do 20 or 25 pumps, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were exhausted, then the next one, and we counted for sure exactly that no one would do one extra pump. That was really a very heavy job every day and gave us actually all the muscles I still have.
How old were you when you had to start pumping the
Oh.
water?
9 or 10,
Already.
yeah.
So it was a hard farm
And-
life.
Oh, that was the most dreaded job we had to do every single day, most dreaded.
And how old were you when you had to go work on the fields and
Oh,
give hay? and
11,
milk
12,
cows already?
13. Oh yeah, much earlier. But we also had an old farm kitchen, and there was in this whole big farmhouse, in this big old farm kitchen was a big tile stove. There's a bench around which you don't see anymore. That was a wonderful place, and a cooktop on one side, and a fire was going in there from morning to night. And we always were responsible to make sure there was enough firewood and coal in. That oven was heated with hard coal, which father got from the coal mines
Yeah.
there. And that was another job we kind of dreaded, bringing in the pails with coal and the wood.
Yeah, that must have been heavy.
Yeah, it was very heavy work.
So was Lena living on the farm at this time, or?
No, grandfather and grandmother were, when we were born, they still did own this farm and run the farm. But I think when we were 2 or 3 years old, grandfather was then 4 years old, he was then over 70 or 78. He gave the farm up to his son. And so his son Hermann moved onto the farm with his wife Anna and their daughter Anneliese, which was actually our cousin. But we grew up with Anneliese like our sister. She was 6 years older, and grandfather and grandmother stayed on the farm and could work if they wished to, or they could retire into this extra little house which was built for the older folks to move in once they retired. So we had always grandmother and grandfather there, and our mother lived there. And mother's sister, Tante Lene, she had to leave when the oldest brother took the farm over. They didn't want her on the farm, too many people. So we lost her, and that was a big loss because she was one of the most wonderful person on earth and loved us 2 girls so much, and we loved her equally much, like our mother. And that was a big loss. Yeah.
So, why don't you, well, let's hear some of the naughty stories you did when you were younger then.
Boy.
Didn't you moon some passerbys at one point?
Pardon?
You mooned some passerbys. I mean, show your bum to them.
Yeah, in front of the street there were steps, stone steps, going up because our farmhouse was elevated. There were maybe at least 12 stone steps and a railing going up, and we always sat on those stone steps, my sister and I, and watched the people, whatever happened in that little village of interest. And there came a nice couple by our house, and they pointed to us too, and because we had very sick hair and had old farm clothes, and they said, "Oh, look at those two sweet little girls." And we stood up, turned around, and pulled our pants down and showed them our behind. And we were told that. And those two people were very much surprised. They laughed, apparently, and didn't take it serious. Now things like that. And across from us lived our cousin, also a Friese, relative cousin of my mother, and they had also a daughter, and this girl was a bit stupid, and she always came over to us and bragged and how much more she had on toys and everything, and we didn't like that very much. And once she came over and stood there and looked at us, so in front of our, next to the street, was all along a ditch running with water filled, muddy water. And we thought, we give you a good lesson. So we went down and give her a real push and pushed her right into this Pomsgraben. And she lay in there, didn't know how to get up. There was actually quite deep water in it. And she screamed, and then her father and mother came running out and saw what happened, and of course we ran away, and they tried to catch us, but they couldn't catch us, we were gone. I remember that one, and we did all kinds of other tricks, teased people.
What about the old guy in his wheelbarrow?
See, yeah, they always asked us who was who, because we were identical twins, and they could never tell us apart, and we always teased them, and we never told them who was who. And oh yeah, there was one other very funny story just came. Oh yeah, there was a neighbor a bit away, and he had to bring the milk to the milk run to be picked up in the morning by the milkwagen, and he was continuously late. This milkwagen always had to wait for him, and he came always running along to quickly make this milkwagen. So we thought we teach him a lesson one day, and it was not just my sister and me, were a few other, I think, boys who came along, and in the evening we took a hammer and nails, and we thought we will nail his little wagon where he wheeled the milk cans to the slum up on a tree. And so the guys went up the tree, or we went up the tree and held this wagon up and were just hammering the, what's the deichsel where you pull it? So
the handle?
Yeah, the handle. We were just hammering it nicely on this tree. So, and when we were in the middle of this very important job, we heard the door open, and this Robber Anton was his name. Robber Anton came out of his house and was wondering who makes that hammering noise, and then he saw us, unfortunately identified us, because we jumped down from the tree and ran away as fast as we could. But this wagon fell down, and we heard the bang and broke. And so next morning he couldn't bring the milk over because the wagon was broken. And so he came to our farm and complained what we had done, and we had to confess, because we couldn't possibly lie. If we would have lied, we would have wanted to lie. And but we had to sort of, or my mother unfortunately, replace or pay for the repair of this wagon. That was a lesson. Another time, there came every year a guy with a merry-go-round, elephants, which turned around and around. And we just loved those merry-go-rounds so much. And of course, we didn't have any money for it. So we knew where Tante Anna's purse was. There was always change in that purse. So we thought, my sister and I, we are going to just steal some of her money for this merry-go-round. We wanted to absolutely go to this. Anyway, we took, I don't know how much change we took, but we stole money. I went down to the merry-go-round and had a wonderful time because all our friends were down there and we just sat there, we were in seventh heaven. And all of a sudden we saw Tante Anna coming running down. Mm-hmm. How she knew, I still don't know, but she knew we had taken her money and stole it to go to this merry-go-round. Anyway, and she warned us if we come home, she will give it to us, which means being hit. So I remember after this round was finished, we debated. We couldn't go home. What should we do? Because we didn't want to get hit. So we thought we cannot live with that. We are going to hang ourselves up the tree or wherever we could end our life. That was, but then I think we found even a rope, because it was very common if people wanted to die in our village, girls or whoever wanted to end their life, they were found hanging on wherever. Anyway, that was our aim. But then I think we were almost ready. We had all the equipment. Yes, I remember that. And then no one wanted to go first. I said, Truatel, you go first. And she said, no, you go first, you go first. Anyway, we were too chicken and we put all the stuff down and decided after all to risk it and go home. And of course, the result were, I think we got some beatings and then the thing was settled again. So, yeah, that was one of the episodes, but we were known as teasing a lot people. Mm-hmm. Like when we went, later on we went to school, and there was one older lady, she was a little bit slow and always worried, and so when we went by, we knocked on her door and said, look, we went just by the post office, and the post office guy said, we should tell you there's a phone call for you there, you should come down immediately, which of course wasn't true. We were teasing her. So she put her stuff on and she thought something terrible happened with her children and sons who lived somewhere else, and she ran down to this post office, and of course postmaster said no, he never said anything like that to us. So things like that we did. Mm-hmm. And so they all knew us. And the shoemaker, a Laubzerschuster, he had mostly diarrhea a lot, and we always saw him running to the toilet in a great hurry. And so we thought we giving him a lesson too. So at night we hammer and nails, and we nailed his little outhouse tightly close. And then when we waited a little bit, it was evening or so, and sure enough, then he came running out, wanted to go quickly to the outhouse, and couldn't open this door. And he started palavering and swearing, and who did that? And we had a great laugh until he got this outhouse open. He had almost his pants full. Anyway, that was another thing I remember we did.
It's funny, you were very naughty.
Yes, we were naughty.
Those are funny
yes,
tricks.
And we were known, we were the Nischnitziger Friesermadel. That's what they called us. Nischnitzig means not much good, you know, always having bad things in our head to do, to tease people. Yeah.
Well, let's how about we talk about the school? What are your memories of your classroom?
Yes.
You had the same teacher for all grades?
Yes, for 6 years we had to go to school, and we had all those school tornisters on our backs, and a
What's a school tornister?
what's a Schiefertafel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
The writing tablet.
yeah, and then we had to, yes, you had to erase that, you know, why?
Yeah.
But we didn't have books, we had this tafel.
It was just a little
Out of-
chalkboard.
Yeah, it was like a chalkboard, and so, yeah, and there was the school wasn't far away. There was one bigger room with benches in, and there were all grades in one room from grade 1 to grade 8,
Mm-hmm.
and a teacher. And the big kids taught the 6-year-old ones, the grade 1s, the grade 8s very often taught us, because the teacher was busier with the higher grades. And I remember on this chalkboard, you say,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, we had to write lines and lines with A's and then B's, and very fine, one like the other, and the teacher checked whether we wrote it good enough. And so that's the schooling.
Yeah.
But we had to sit there. Oh, I have a picture of us in school.
He was quite
Yeah.
a strict teacher though, right?
Oh,
You got lots of hittings from him?
Oh, yeah. The teacher were very, very strict. They had authority. The teacher in our village, the teacher and the priest were sort of respected people by all, and they were always in the right most of the time. You know, no one said anything against the teacher, and some teachers were quite brutal. Some were nice, but some had so much power they hit you for anything and everything. If you talked to your neighbor during the hour, that was sometimes a reason to get hit over your fingers with a rod. And we learned, of course, what you had to learn, but not really as much, I think, as there were hardly any books available or anything like that. Not of what kids learn.
So
today.
just basic reading, writing, and
Yeah,
arithmetic.
Arithmetic too.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to learn the timetable. You know, you had to know what's 7 times 9, and you had to know. And if you didn't know that, you got hit for it too. Absolutely.
What about history? Did they teach?
Not too much
No.
history. No,
Just that.
not too much history.
Okay.
No, it was limited.
Any other
Oh yeah, we had
interesting
to learn,
stories
but
from
what
school?
we do, music, we all had singing, and music was taught, and
You did sports too?
sports was great.
Was it just girls
Oh,
alone
on
and
the
separate
Hitler
from boys, or was it
games? No.
together?
We loved sports in our off time between the hours. We went always out and played all kinds of games, but we had also really sports, running and jumping and all this. That was, of course, later on the Hitler greatly encouraged. The saying was, you got to have a healthy body and a healthy mind. Healthy body, healthy mind went hand in hand. And we did good things. We had to collect anything which was collectible. Waste did not exist. Everything was recycled, and we kids after school had to go pick up recycling stuff, bring it to a depot, and help on farms. Sometimes wherever help was needed. Our energy was certainly put to good use for the good of the whole community, definitely.